Hello and welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Show. I am your host, Jay Jones. Black Entrepreneur Blueprint was created specifically to educate and inspire Black entrepreneurs to launch, build, and grow successful businesses. Join us as we help build an economic power base in the Black community by promoting business ownership. If you are currently an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur, we invite you to join us every week here at Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, episode number 356. I'm your host, Jay Jones, and today we have another outstanding and informative show in store for you. Today we're going to be speaking with Ms. Jennifer R. Farmer. Now, she's the founder of Spotlight Public Relations, which handles a lot of major entertainers, and she also is the author of her second book titled First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and Life. But before we jump into Jennifer's amazing entrepreneurial journey, I just want to share a few things with the BEB family. First and foremost, I want to welcome all first-time listeners to Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Welcome to the BEB family. Please stick around until the end of today's broadcast, and I'm going to share all my social media contact information and my resource links, such as the link to my new book, A New Black Wall Street, Circulating the Black Dollar Worldwide by Building Successful E-Commerce Businesses, 2 platforms I created to help circulate dollars in the worldwide Black economy, BeSmartByBlack.com and HireBlackFreelancers.com, and also my new rebranded, rebooted Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Academy, BEBacademy.com. Now, I also want to remind you guys, if you're interested in learning how to podcast, on tomorrow, Tuesday, May 11th, I'm doing the first of 2 live sessions on my Podcast Profits live training. So there's only 10 spots available, and at the time of this recording, there are only 3 spots available. So on Tuesday, May 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then the following week, Tuesday, May 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be doing a live training titled Podcast Profits, and I'm going to teach you everything from A to Z on how to build a successful and money-making podcast. So if you go to BEBpodcastprofits.com, you can get more information. BEBpodcastprofits.com. Remember, this is coming out on Monday, May 10th, and the actual training starts tomorrow, Tuesday, May 11th. So when you hear this, make sure you go to BEBpodcastprofits.com, BEBpodcastprofits.com. Now, if you try to enroll and click the button and nothing happens, that means all the 10 spaces have been filled up. But if you've ever thought about starting a podcast, or if you currently have a podcast and need to grow that podcast and monetize it, this is the live training for you. So BEBpodcastprofits.com. Now, let's get ready for our interview with Ms. Jennifer R. Farmer. We are live with Ms. Jennifer R. Farmer, founder of Spotlight PR and the author of her second book, First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and Life. Jennifer, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Jay. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for taking the time out to share your experiences with the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family. So for those of my listeners who aren't familiar with you, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself personally, where you're from, and then we're going to jump into your entrepreneurial journey and then focus on your new book.
Sure. So I'm joining you from Columbus, Ohio, the Columbus, Ohio area where I'm from. I lived in Columbus for most of my life. Also have lived in Nevada. I've lived in the Washington, D.C. area, and I went to school in upstate New York. So I've kind of bounced around, but right now I'm back in Columbus, Ohio, and that's where I'm having this conversation from. I'm an author. I'm a social justice publicist. I'm a mother of 2, and I'm someone who's deeply committed to advancing racial justice.
Great. Yeah, we definitely need that, especially in this day and time, and what's going on the political front and also the social front right now. Um, I wanted to touch base because you are a woman of many talents. So you own a PR company, Spotlight PR, and
Yes.
also you're an author for your second book. But I want to touch on your PR company first. Then we'll move into your new book. How did you get into public relations, and did you start off in corporate America, or did you go directly and start your own practice?
So I'm somewhat of a unicorn because I began my career in politics. I
Oh,
worked
wow.
for the Ohio House of Representatives, the Ohio Senate. I also worked for Governor Ted Strickland. So I have this rich political background. And in some of the political environments that I worked in, I always received compliments about my writing. And I worked for a state senator, Mark Mallory, who went on to become the mayor of Cincinnati, Ohio. And at the time, he was Senator Mallory, and he would always say, let Jennifer write it or have Jennifer write it. And so at that particular point in my career, I equated writing with communications. And because I kept hearing that I was a good writer, I thought, okay, well, let's go and do communications. So when I left the political arena the first time, I went to work for a nonprofit faith-based organization, and I ran their communications and marketing. Throughout the course of my 18 or 19 years of professional experience, I've done strategic communications for faith-based groups, for labor unions. I worked for a significant period of time for the Service Employees International Union, their district or their local union in Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. I also worked for SEIU International. So I just have this rich experience that's political, but also communications. But to answer your direct question, I started off working for nonprofit organizations. I also did communications for social justice entities for political campaigns, and that's really how I started my career.
So, what made you transition from leaving that space to go and start your own firm, per se? Was it one incident, or was it just the right time for you to move forward?
Well, it's something that I thought about for at least a decade, but I was very, very afraid. I had grown accustomed to being paid twice per month. I was doing very well, and I was very, very afraid to leave the comfort of the 9 to 5 job. When I had my second child, I have 2 children. When I had my second child, I decided that I wanted to create a life for her that was different than what I had enjoyed. I wanted more control over my time. I didn't want to go into an office. I didn't want to travel as much. And so, really, the birth of my daughter pushed me into entrepreneurship because, like I said, I wanted to be as present as possible while still engaged with meaningful work.
Right. Now that makes a lot of sense. So I want the light bulb to go off to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family. There's always a why behind it. And hopefully your why is good enough to help you make that transition, because there's so much talent that's never realized in their own enterprises, because just as what you just spoke, Jennifer, that fear of making that transition and leaving those secure paychecks that you're getting twice a month.
Right.
So kudos to you on being able to follow that dream. So we definitely respect and appreciate that. I wanted to ask real quick before we jump into your book. A lot of people that are trying to transition from employee to entrepreneur, there are tons of hurdles. But how did you finance that transition financially? Because obviously, if you start your own business, unless you're doing it part time, you probably don't have any initial revenues. So, how did you finance your PR firm?
So what I did was I set the intention, and when I got really clear with myself that I was going to eventually work for myself, I feel like that was the first step. And then from there, I let people know, hey, I'm open to doing side projects. I'm open to writing for you. I'm open to consulting on the side.
Mm.
So the way that I started was I took on side projects, and I would wake up at 4 in the morning and I would work from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. on side projects. And then I would get me and my daughter ready for work and for daycare for her. I would take her to daycare. I would go to work. And then when I came home, I would do what I needed to do with her. And then I would jump back on the computer and work another 2 or 3 hours. Every single weekend was devoted to my business. So
Wow.
I lined up a babysitter. I had a babysitter come at 8 a.m. every Saturday. And I worked from 8 a.m. until about 1 p.m. every Saturday. And then when my babysitter left, I obviously spent time with my daughter. And when she went to sleep, I would do more work. So
Wow.
for a good year and a half, I had no life, outside of working. And my sister would joke and say, okay, most people work, Monday through Friday. Will you give it a rest? And I didn't give it a rest at that point because I knew that if I was going to ultimately work for myself, I had to leave my job with clients in hand.
Right.
So I probably did that from 2017 until 2019 for 2 years.
Oh,
And then
wow.
in January 2019, I had the confidence. I had people lined up waiting to work with me. I
Hmm.
had some revenue in hand, and I felt like, okay, I can make it. And that's exactly what I did. So I did side hustles for a good 2 years.
Now, that's a nice transition into your own business because it wasn't cold turkey that you had to come out and all of a sudden, man, I'm at zero. Now
Right.
I got to make some money. So once again, light bulb goes off to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family. The smooth transition, giving yourself the ability to be successful by spending that extra time and commitment on your business. And so I think a lot of times, Jennifer, people aren't successful in that transition because they still treat their business or their burgeoning business as a part-time business when you've devoted almost full-time hours, probably if you added it up based
Yes.
on your weekends. And so
And the
part-time effort.
The other thing is there were
Time.
many nights where I did not sleep.
Yeah.
There were many nights where I would stay up all night working, or I gave up many, many weekends. And when I say many, many weekends, every free moment that I had was devoted towards my business. I pulled several all-nighters, and I used to think that all-nighters for when you were in college.
College, right.
I pulled several all-nighters in order to be able to fulfill what my clients needed.
Yeah. So that's that commitment that's necessary. So as I was saying, if you're putting in part-time effort, you're going to get part-time results. So there comes a time when you have to make that transition and be able to, put it all on the table, push all your chips in and move forward. I know that just doing research and having experience talking to you before, that your PR firm is very successful and you have some very high profile clients. And you don't have to give out any names or anything if you don't want to, but how did you get those high level clients as partners or customers for your business?
90% of my clients are referrals.
Wow.
So typically, I've done very little proactive marketing.
Okay.
Typically, I work with someone and they like me and they tell someone else about me.
Cool.
I have one client, and he won't mind me saying this, but um, I have two clients who are really, really good about referring business.
Hmm.
And one of them is Michael Render, PKA Killer Mike. So
Hmm.
Mike will walk into a space and he will observe what's happening. And then I've had him call me on a Sunday and say, Jennifer, you need to know this person. And, it's a Sunday, so I'm chilling out. I'm probably
Right.
prepared. And he will call me on FaceTime, and the person will be sitting right next to
Right.
he has literally handed them the phone and said, okay, you all talk and work it out. But he has been very, very consistent and very, very serious about referring business to me. And it's not just him, it's his team. I've
Right.
had managers, when people reach out to him for different projects, I've had managers say, no, you will not hire that writer. We have our own writer. You will pay her to do the writing for him. And so his team, they're devoted in that way. And then I have other clients who are just really, really good about checking in to say, how are you doing? How is your business doing? How can I support you? Do you
Right.
need to know someone? And so that's how that's how my business has grown. And Jay, you know this, when, I can say, oh, I'm wonderful, I'm great, I do a good job, but it means something else when someone else walks into a space, perhaps a space that I don't even have access to, and they say, oh, I think you should hire,
Right.
you should hire Jennifer. So that's really how I've grown my business.
Oh, that's great. But
No.
we'll get back to your business because actually no, I'm going to ask it to you right now.
Okay.
What do you see before we jump into your book? What do you see for your PR firm within the next 5 years?
Well, I see growth. I want to bring on, within 5 years' time, I will have brought on an additional 2 full-time employees.
Okay.
Perhaps I'll have a physical location.
Okay. All right. In terms of so you're doing all remote now, and I know it's crazy with the time that we're in. So your business is all remote right now?
Right.
Okay, great. Now you have an exit plan for that business or no?
Um, I have a loose exit plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a very loose exit plan.
So if the number looks good, you're available to talk, right? Cool. Oh, well, I want
Good question, by the way.
Thank you. So anybody out there listening with deep pockets, if you want a PR firm, call Jennifer. So I want to transition into your second book, First and Only: A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and Life. There we go. So if you're watching this, check out the screen. It's the book and it's on the cover. It's actually available for sale right now. I wanted to ask you something because you're very specific with your title of your book. You didn't say for people of color. You said for Black women. I want to ask you why you said that.
I devoted this book to Black women because throughout the course of my career, I've consumed a ton of leadership content. And most of the leadership books that I've read have not been authored by Black women. A lot of it has been authored by white men, white women. And as a result, my experience has been erased in those books. And so there are a lot of books that tell you, okay, you need to do this, this, and this in order to be successful. They don't talk about what doing that looks like on a Black female body. And so there are books that say, well, you should not wait until your evaluation to ask for a raise. You don't have to wait. You can ask at any point. And sometimes when Black women advocate for themselves in professional spaces, we can be seen as pushy. We can be seen as audacious. We can be seen as aggressive. And so I wanted to offer something to Black women that takes into consideration what we experience in professional spaces: the tone policing, the judgments about our hair, the judgments about our body type, the judgments about how we present. And so I felt like that was overlooked in most leadership books. And that's why I wanted to offer my book. And I know that you don't have it in your hand, but what I will say is the cover of the book, it has, in the background, there are silhouettes of Black women with different hairstyles. And I did that because for Black women, hair is not just a testament of who we are, or it's not just about self-expression. It's a political calculation. There's a reason that now, as a small business owner, I feel more comfortable wearing my hair natural than I did when I was inside of different organizations. Right. And I basically wanted to say that Black women are always making calculations. We are always choosing. We are always determining whether or not we speak up, how we speak up. Do we put a smiley face at the end of the email, an emoji, how that will be received. And I feel like that needed to be called out very, very specifically, and also by a Black woman.
Yeah. And that's a great answer because I tell people that are not Black, it's exhausting sometimes having to understand and be on quote unquote code when you're in certain situations.
Yeah.
And I was at a restaurant. This was before the pandemic. And this is just an example, because Black men, we're the boogeyman. We're scary. So we're with predators or whatever people think, based on how the media portrays us. And I was at a restaurant with my wife and had to go to the restroom. And you had to go downstairs, probably about 20 steps, and it was a long hallway back because the place was a catering business also. And so I get up to go down, and in front of me, probably about 10 paces, was an older white woman who was probably about 65, 67 years old. And the first thing that came to my mind is nobody else down there. Let me keep my distance
Yeah.
from her so I don't become, quote unquote, a threat. And she gets nervous and, calls or hollers out. Then you don't know what's going to happen after that. But, for people who that are non-Black that are watching or listening to this, it takes work. Trust me, just to be in our skin. And I don't have, the benefit of knowing what it's like for a Black woman. I got a wife, two daughters, sister, mom, and all that, but I can't experience that. So I really appreciate you sharing those types of stories and incidences and how to navigate that field as a Black woman when we're focusing or in different spaces. I was doing some research on you, Jennifer, and you talked about the word intentional
Yeah.
in one of the stories. What did you mean by intentional, and what are some of the benefits in being intentional, like with your time and other things?
Um, so to everything that you just said, you're absolutely right. It takes a tremendous amount of work to live and to exist in this skin. With all its beauty, it's still work. And
Right.
when I talk about the importance of setting an intention, I tell my clients with every interview that you do, you need to set an intention for that interview. Why are you doing it? What do you want to convey? What do you want to get out of it? Even when we are thinking about how to pitch a story, I ask my clients sometimes, well, what do you want the headline to be? Well, when you know what you want, then you can take steps to get there. So for instance, if you're having an interview and you know that you want the headline to be X, Y, and Z, you say X, Y, and Z several times throughout the conversation to increase the likelihood that that point lands on the person with whom you're speaking.
Right.
And for me, when I think about intention in my life, it's like, okay, well, what's my intention for being here? What's my intention for this conversation? How does this person receive communication? And that will inform how I deliver, what words I say, what examples I use based on who that person is. When it comes to First and Only, my book, First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and in Life, I wanted to intentionally speak to Black women. I am sure there are men, there are women of color, there are white women who will read the book and who will get something out of it. But I wanted Black women to feel seen. So many times we consume content and we have to find ourselves in that content. We have to fit our life experiences into what's available. And I wanted to offer something different. And so that's a little bit, what I mean when I talk about setting intentions and also being intentional.
No, I love it. I love it because people ask me about the title of my podcast, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. And I had somebody ask me, they gave me a 1-star review on the podcast, the only one I ever got. Even I still got 5.0 on the podcast, but they said, oh, so this is only for Black people. And I'm intentionally Black because there's certain intrinsic things that we go through as Black entrepreneurs that other ethnicities probably don't have to deal with. So in saying that, what have you found are some intrinsic things specifically that Black women have to go through in the professional atmosphere that you address in the book?
Well, we are constantly asked to prove ourselves. I don't care how long your resume is. I don't care how much education you have. I don't care who you know or who you've worked with. You walk into spaces as a Black woman, and you are often new spaces, I should say. There's an expectation that you need to prove yourself. I was brought in to help a team, and uh, I noticed that the guys on the team, they were treating me as though I was new to communications, as though I started last week. And they kept explaining things to me. And for a while, I didn't say anything. And then it got to the point where it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. And so I told the person, listen, I want to let you know that this is not new to me. I've worked in this field for a very, very long time. And while I'm teachable, the way that you are treating me suggests that, that I don't have the level of experience.
Right.
I've not only worked in this area for 18 years, I lecture at Johns Hopkins on this area. I've written a book on this area. So trust me, I understand. And it was only after I was that direct that they backed off. So
Right.
It didn't matter who brought me to the conversation. It didn't matter the ideas that I was raising. I still had to prove myself in that setting. And I have found, as I talk to Black women, many of them can tell you the same. Even
Right.
if they could be a medical doctor and they still have to prove themselves.
Right.
And so that gets very exhausting and it gets very tiring. It's frustrating, but I talk about that in the book. And I talk about the importance of us being assured of our worth and not looking for validation from the spaces or even the people who we work with, because a lot of times there's such a bias towards Black women that you just will not get it. And
Right.
if you're waiting for it to come from, someone outside of yourself, that may never happen. And so I talk about that very candidly. So there's that. There's also the angry Black woman trope that,
Oh yeah.
many of us, many Black women, we've been taught from the time that we were girls that we have to be careful how we express ourselves, because we don't want to, you don't want to be accused of being angry.
Right.
And, because of that, sometimes we won't say anything when we need to say something. We won't push back on in salary negotiations. We will take what we're offered. There have also been times when Black women have experienced sexual harassment and they're very, very careful. And sometimes they don't say anything.
Right.
So, there's so many tropes that we deal with. There's so many assumptions. And that in and of itself, it can be tiring, it can be exhausting, and you have to mentally prepare yourself. All right, I'm joining this conference call. This is what I'm going to face on this call. I know who I am. How am I going to get through it? How am I going to reward myself afterwards? I have literally hung up conference calls and just thought, I want to go to a wall and just bang my head on the wall.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be, like I said, I obviously can't experience it from your perspective, but being Black, and like I said, man, we have some similar and we have some different issues that we have to focus on too. Let me ask you, what would be some advice for my 25-year-old daughter, my 22-year-old daughter who's about to graduate and get ready to go into the professional workspace? What would be some advice for young Black women that you would give to help navigate this arena or that space?
Well, I would tell your daughters, as I tell my nieces who are in that age range, to trust yourself.
Okay.
Trust how you feel. There's so much about being a woman and being a Black woman where we are taught not to trust ourselves, that we don't know, that we're too emotional. And
Right.
I think that if you can instill in your daughters and in young people to trust yourself, if you get headaches every time you have a conversation with this person, there's a reason why. If the person makes you uncomfortable or you feel unsafe, that is not a figment of your imagination. There is something to that, and you need to investigate. If you feel, there was a time where I would wait to offer ideas or suggestions because I wanted my idea to be perfect. And I
Right.
would go to these meetings and I would say, oh no, I think we should be doing this, but I wouldn't say anything. And I wouldn't say anything because I did not trust myself. And then it would be so infuriating to have a sense of what might happen. So my work is public relations, but to have a messaging recommendation or feedback on how a message might be received, to not share it, and then to have the media clue in on the very, very thing that I was worried about.
Right.
And after that happened, over and over again, I said, okay, you have to trust yourself. And even if no one takes your suggestion, at least you know that you put it out there. So I think that's critically important. Another thing that's critically important is developing a village, a team of people who know you very, very well, a team of people who believe in you, people who are confident in their own calling and ability, so they won't tear you down, and people who you can turn to. You know, when you have these unpleasant experiences, having people who you can turn to bounce it off of, or to just help you refocus on what's truly important, that's, you know, or to give you a different perspective about the same situation, that's helpful. I remember early in my career, I was working for an organization, and I was working with some different team members, and there was one team member, and I just felt that he was very, very hard on me. And I would go to the vice president of this organization, and I would cry to her, and I would say, you know, this is what he said, and, you know, I don't like working with him. And she would listen, and she, you know, she heard me. She created a safe space for me to speak with her. And then after months of this going on, she helped me refocus. And she said, Jennifer, make him obsolete. You know, learn as much as you can for him, and then make that person obsolete. Once you have the knowledge, he can't take it back. So focus less on what he's doing to make you uncomfortable, and focus on what you can learn from this person, so that hopefully, you know, you will be able to offer or fill that gap between what the organization needs and what he offers. And from that day, my focus was less about how this person, quote unquote, treated me, and more on what do I need to learn from him? What skills does he have that I need to learn? And so that was very, very, very helpful.
Now that's a great point that you put out there, because in the corporate structure, a lot of times you're going to be working with people that you probably don't really like, but you still have to be able to be effective and continue to work and get the job done. So yeah, it's as you were just talking about that, I really started thinking about my oldest daughter, because I think she's eventually going to go out on her own. You know, we've talked about that, but I said, get your hard skills, you know, learn and leverage everything that you can. And then when the time is right, you'll know it. I wanted to ask you, when did you determine that the time was right to write this book, and how long did you sit on it before you actually wrote it?
That's a good question. So I started, I didn't know that what I was working on would become a book. For me, writing is very, very cathartic. When I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling uncertain, when I need to make sense of the world, I write. And so I started writing as a journal, and the journal was everything that I wish someone had told me earlier in my career. In fact, I wanted to call the book Everything Everyone Ever Told Me, or Everything No One Ever Told Me, something like that. That's what I wanted to call it. And I remember going to a publisher and saying, here's the title for this book. And they said, no. But so in this journal, I started writing down some of the lessons that I was learning, some of the myths that I had held on to that were counterproductive or that were holding me back. And then after making headway, I think I probably had 50 pages, I reached out to a friend who I knew edited books. I asked her if I could retain her as an editor. She started going through what I had written, and she said, you know, I feel like you were telling my story. I feel like you were describing what I have experienced. Please keep writing. The world needs this book. And so then I kept writing and kept writing. But basically, I started working on this in 2018. I really, really focused in 2019. And by October of 2019, I had my book contract. But if you know anything about publishing, just because you get a contract, it doesn't mean the book comes out next week or even next year. So I had my contract in October of 2019, and then the book finally made its way in February of 2021.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of people have a story. Well, I think we all have stories, but being able to put that story or that pen to paper and be able to share that with people, that's something that's extraordinary. And so I wanted to ask you real quick about your process in writing the book. Did you have a set process? Did you develop or certain times that you wrote the book? Because I get this question a lot, because I've written 2 books, working on a 3rd and 4th now, and people always ask me, what's your process? So do you have a specific process to write a book that you can share?
Sure. So the first thing I had to do was to get out of my own way. I would have all these negative messages, such as no one wants to read a book about Black women, or who do you think you are? Like these things were coming. So the first thing I had to do was silence the inner critic and to decide I'm going to write this book no matter what. If one person reads the book, that's a success. That was the first thing. And then after that, I had to understand the rhythm of my body and the rhythm of my work. And so for me, I've always been a morning person. I do my best thinking in the morning. Ideas come to me in the morning. I can write really quickly and really efficiently in the morning. And so I knew that about myself. And I said, okay, well, for now, I'm not starting a business. So the time that I was using to kind of get the business off the ground, I can devote some of that to writing. So maybe 3 or 4 days a week, I devoted that early morning slot to writing. And this is on Saturdays and Sundays too. So I would get up early, I would write for an hour, and then if I had work stuff I needed to do, I would do that, and then I would go on about my day. And then when different thoughts would come to me throughout the day, I would just make a little note of it so that I could come back to it and incorporate it later. The other thing that I did is I started listening to people who were prolific writers. So I listened to Stephen King talk about his writing process. I listened to Bell Hooks. Every January, I go through a Bell Hooks phase.
Right.
I listen and I read her book. That's how I start my year, consuming a lot of Bell Hooks. So I looked for people who were prolific, and I said, okay, if they can write 30 and 40 books, surely I can finish this, this one book. And then I started to really, really enjoy the process. I started to just fall in love with the process, and I released myself from self-judgment. I also would remind myself that the people who get published aren't always the best writers. They are the people who commit that they will not give up. And I just kept telling myself that over and over again. Don't give up writing. Even if today you got half a paragraph, come back tomorrow. And I gave myself a lot of grace. So I didn't say, okay, you have to write 7 days a week. I said, nope, you have to write at least 4 days a week, and you have to commit to at least an hour. And typically what happened is I would have to stop myself. I would get into a chapter, I would really be enjoying it. And then I would have to look at the clock and say, okay, you've got other things to do. You have to close, you have to stop for now. But that was basically my process. And I followed a similar process when I wrote my first book.
Okay. Now it's funny because I wanted to ask you, are you old school? Do you write things down by hand? Do you type, or do you use dictation?
You write?
You type. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
But when notes or ideas come to me throughout the day, I'll use voice dictation, or I will just put a little memo on my phone, look up this or research this or expound on this.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I like to I don't write my whole book by hand, but I like to do my framework, my outlines, and then my notes. And then what I started doing, so this is a tip that I give a lot of people. So there's software out there like Dragon and other dictation software that you can go and talk your book. Now you're going to have ums and ahs and make mistakes, but then you go get that printed up and then you go in and start editing it down. So now you'll have something on the paper that you can work with, and then you can go in and fill it out. But it helped me create or write books a lot faster than the first book I wrote was literally all by hand.
That's devotion.
Then I went back and I typed it and I started having some edits, but I'm like, I'm never going to do that again. But I just wanted to see what your process was. Do you have any plans for any third book coming out eventually?
Yes. I don't want to talk much about it here,
okay.
But I will tell you that I had a conversation with my agent, and we were talking about what I would write next. And she gave me an idea, and I laughed at her.
Oh yeah.
I'm sitting with a few ideas, and I will probably start writing again really soon.
Cool. Let me ask you, has your book or books now, have they helped your PR practice?
Yes.
Okay.
So my first book This is so funny because when I wrote the book, I thought, well, people are going to hire you to speak. So I
Right.
thought I was going to do the speaking circuit.
Right.
That's what I thought. And that's not what happened. I wrote the book and people said, oh, okay, so you're an expert on PR. Let me hire you.
Wow.
And I started, so the book really helped to kickstart my business because people said, okay, well, you have this book. Can you do this for us? Or can you help me promote this?
Right.
And I worked really hard in the early days, but that book really, really helped me in terms of getting my foot in the door. So that book was really helpful. This book just came out, so I don't know. I don't know how it will help this business or a business that I might start in the future. But the difference between the two books is the first book I wrote about my profession, and I wrote about some of the successes that I've had, from a communication standpoint. And I wanted to document it because people like me who support other people, often you will never know our names.
Right.
You see the people who we support, but you don't always see, the public doesn't always see the people who are behind the scenes. So
Right.
my first book, I had done a lot of work with Bishop William Barber, and I wanted to document what I saw, and I wanted to document that experience. And so that's really what the book was about. This book it's a part of who I am. And it's a part of what I've experienced. And I have so much joy around this book. And I believe that it's going to do a lot of people, a lot of Black women, a lot of women, a lot of men who want to be supportive. I believe it's going to do a lot of good. So I feel, I'm proud of them both. And this one has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, that's it makes a lot of sense what you said about your first book helping your business. Um, I own like 200 plus domains, so I buy domain names, and every time I come up with an idea, I buy a domain name. So one of my domains is my book is my business card, and it came from the concept exactly what you talked about. So when you write a book, you're looked at on a different level. So now you're a published author, and it could be self-published or whatever. You're a
Yeah.
published author. And I used to tell people, I say, when Oprah had her show, unless you were an entertainer, an athlete, or an author, or a public figure, politician, it was very hard to get on her show. So,
Yeah.
so that having author behind your name is very big to help your business move along, and your personal brand. So so that's it. Light bulb goes off, BEB family. Don't sleep on publishing a book, right? I want to play. I got a couple of quick questions for you because I know I don't want to hold you too long. I want to play a quick word association game with you, and I want you to know you are the first person I'm doing this with on air. So,
Lucky me.
yeah, exactly. So you can give me a one-word answer, sentence answer, or whatever. But I want to throw a couple of words out there and see what you say. First one is Black woman.
Powerful.
Cool. Life.
Giving.
Happiness.
Fulfilled.
Work.
Hard.
Ding, ding, ding. You got an A. So,
Really?
now those are good, quick answers. But those are good answers. Definitely good answers. So a lot of times, I don't do this on the show. A lot of times I'll do it with people off of the show just to kind of hear where their head is and what exactly comes to mind. But no, those are great answers. I got two questions for you. The first one is there anything that I neglected in this interview that you feel the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family needs to know?
Well, for the Black Entrepreneurship Blueprint family, I would love for you to buy the book. So they say you need to make an ask. I'm making an ask.
That's
Please
right.
buy First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and in Life. If you are able, buy one for yourself and buy one for a friend. And if you're saying, well, how do I find it? You can find it on Broadleaf Books, the publisher. You can find it in Target. You can find it in Walmart, any Christian bookseller, because technically this is a Christian book. I talk about my faith in the book as being a source of something that has sustained me. So it's a Christian book. So you can find it at Christian bookstores. You can also Google me, and it's on my website, and you can find it that way, jenniferrfarmer.org.
All right. Okay. Is it not on Amazon? It's just
It's on
on your.
Amazon as well. Yeah. So
Okay. Okay.
anywhere books are sold,
Okay.
you can find this book.
Okay, great. All right. So we want to make sure, like we do always, family, support everybody that's on the platform. They're on here for a reason. Okay. So make sure, first and only, a Black woman's guide to thriving at work and life. Make sure you guys support Jennifer R. Farmer on that. Next to last question for you, Jennifer. If you had an opportunity to have a conversation with anybody living or dead, who would it be and why?
Just one person?
Just one person.
Oh, that's a tough one. I would love to have a conversation with Malcolm X.
All right. And why would that be?
Because he demonstrated such growth and evolution throughout his lifetime, such discipline, and such a love for Black people. And I would love to just sit with him and talk about the source of how he became him and how we can become the best versions of ourselves.
Nah, that's a great answer. I get Malcolm a lot. I get Jesus a lot. Who else do I get? I get Harriet Tubman. That's a pretty common one too. But no, that's a great answer. And I just want to close this out. It's not really a question. It's actually a comment. I want to personally thank you for sharing time with the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family. Having connected with you several months ago with Killer Mike, and you were very responsive in terms of, hey, yeah, let's make it happen. So I definitely appreciate that. And I know if you're working with clients of that nature and that stature, that you're doing tremendous work. Do you have any room for any additional clients, or are you booked up right now? That was my question/comment.
I'll be taking new clients beginning in April.
Okay, gotcha. Now, if anybody who's interested in being a client, what's the standard procedure for them to reach out to you via social media or email? How would that work?
So it's through my websites. There is a contact form on spotlightpr.org. And there's also a contact us form at jenniferrfarmer.org. So you can go to the contact form and send an email, and we would start the conversation that way. Okay. On Spotlight PR, there's also a questionnaire where new clients, prospective clients can document what they need. And then I have some questions on there that helps me assess what they need, what their time frame is, and also what success looks like to them. It's Great. Very, very important in what I do to understand my version of success may not align with what another person sees as success. So, so that questionnaire helps me to start that conversation.
Great. Is there a particular type of client that you look for?
Yes.
And if so, can you expound on that?
Yeah. So with my business, I'm committed to helping people who are doing work to advance social and racial justice. So if the work is not directly tied to one of those categories, then it's probably not a good fit for my particular firm. So I work with people who are doing immigrant justice work, environmental justice work, racial justice, social justice. I work with leaders who are also deeply passionate about those issues. And, they have a history of using their platform to advance and to advocate for those issues. Those things give me life. They make me feel that I'm having an impact. And as most business owners will tell you, they want to have an impact. And so right. that's who I support.
Great. All right. So you hear that, BEB family. So make sure if you reach out to Jennifer, you fall into that sphere. All right. We don't want to waste your time if you don't fall into that sphere. Not that you're going to waste your time, but you understand that what her focus is and who our ideal customer base or client is. So once again, Jennifer, we appreciate you sharing your experiences your knowledge, your know-how with the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family. Anytime you have anything else coming out, look, I need to be the first guy you call when your third book comes out. All right. So and we're going to have you back on the platform. But once again, we thank you for sharing. And it was a real joy and pleasure to have you on the show.
Nice meeting you as well. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
You too.
That was an amazing interview with Miss Jennifer Farmer, the author of First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and Life. Make sure you guys support Jennifer's book. Go to Amazon, pick it up. I've actually got 2 copies she sent for my daughters. I actually read it. It's an excellent read. So make sure you check that out. I want to give you guys a couple of takeaways about this interview. But before I do that, I want to share all my social media contact information and my resource links with the BEB family. First and foremost, I mentioned at the top of the show, my new book is out, A New Black Wall Street, Circulating the Black Dollar Worldwide by Building Successful E-Commerce Businesses. You can go to anewblackwallstreet.com. Pick yourself up a copy, $14.95 for the print version, $9.95 for the digital version. Now, if you need additional assistance building your successful, sustainable e-commerce business, I have a compatible flagship course titled Brand Builder Academy Elite. You can go to bbaelite.com, and this is a flagship program, which is a 14-week implementation program that takes you from ideation all the way to creating your products or services and selling on all your major platforms. So you can go to bbaelite.com and use the coupon code BBAELITE100 to save $100 off of that. I also mentioned at the top of the show my new rebranded, rebooted Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Academy. Go to bebacademy.com. All of my online trainings, resources, webinars, and courses except BBA Elite are in the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Academy. You can try before you buy. You get 5 days free access to everything in the academy before you have to make an investment. So go to bebacademy.com. I also mentioned at the top of the show, guys, 2 platforms I created to help circulate dollars in the worldwide black economy. So if you are a black product producer and you want to sell your products to black consumers worldwide, upload your product information to besmartbyblack.com. It is free, and you can connect and sell your products to black consumers worldwide. Now, I didn't forget about you freelancers. If you do anything on Fiverr.com or freelancer.com, make sure you go to hireblackfreelancers.com, HIRE, blackfreelancers.com. Once again, it is free to upload your information, and you can connect with black consumers and black businesses that want to hire black freelancers. Now, you can find all of that information at BEB Connect, which will take you to a page on the website, and all of those resources will be linked there on that website, along with my social media, which I'm going to give you right now. So anything long, family, you want to reach out to me, hit me by email, jjones@blackentrepreneurblueprint.com, JAYJONES@blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. Facebook, go type in Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, follow us there. Twitter, jjones001, JAYJONES001. Instagram, I have 2 Instagram accounts. You can go to my personal account, jjones4real, JAYJONES, the number 4, REAL, jjones4real. And also, you can go to Instagram, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, family. I have additional content on YouTube that is not on the podcast. Yes, the podcast does come out every Monday morning, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and all your major podcast platforms. But go to YouTube, type in Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, hit that subscribe button. Also, LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. Just type in J Jones, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Also, Clubhouse. If you're on Clubhouse, follow me on Clubhouse at I am J Jones, at I am J Jones. Once again, all of this can be found at bebconnect.com. Now, let me give you some takeaways from this amazing interview with Jennifer R. Farmer. One of the first takeaways I want to bring up is something Jennifer mentioned at the beginning of the interview. She mentioned that she received compliments all the time about her writing when she was working in politics. And so I think we have to understand, guys, sometimes when people express to you that you're good at something, that's a talent that you have. And so even though that wasn't Jennifer's specific job title, she found, or other people found, that she was proficient in writing. And what she did was she harnessed that talent to then go out and start her own PR firm. So be cognizant of what people tell you. And when people, or a lot of people, tell you the same thing, that, hey, you're good at this, that's a talent that you have, something that's natural. Another thing that I liked that Jennifer talked about was her hustle. You know, I always talk about, you put in part-time effort, you're going to get out part-time results. So when Jennifer was looking to transition from employee to entrepreneur, she put in work every morning from 4 to 6. She worked on her business. When she got home after she put her daughter down and had some time, she worked on her business at night. And Saturdays and Sundays, she worked from the morning, I believe it was 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. And that's a commitment. So a lot of times we want the result as an entrepreneur, but we're not willing to put in the commitment. So you have to be committed to become successful. And what I also like what Jennifer said was she did that for about 2 years. So when she left her corporate job, she already had clients at her PR firm. So she didn't have the added stress of leaving a job and a full-time salary and then have to worry about making money. Where was her next check going to come from? Because she had already planned it and made sure that she had clients before she left to start her own firm. And the last takeaway I want to talk about is something that Jennifer talked about early on in the interview also. It was her why. And many times as entrepreneurs, the why is just money. And if that is the only reason you're becoming an entrepreneur, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be harder for you to be successful. I think you need something a little deeper than that. And money basically is a tool. But Jennifer's why was that she wanted to spend more time with her youngest daughter. She wanted that freedom and flexibility to be there more and be able to work remotely. And so I think we really need to dig deep. A lot of times superficially, yeah, I need the money, but what does having the money mean to you? How is that going to impact and affect your life? And I think we really need to dig deeper when we find or look for our why. And so that was something I thought that was very important also. All in all, that was a tremendous interview with Jennifer R. Farmer. Once again, guys, make sure you support her. Check out her book, First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and Life. Now, before we close on out, guys, I just want to remind you once again, if you're interested in starting a money-making podcast or taking your current podcast and monetizing it, make sure you join me tomorrow, Tuesday, May 11th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the first session. And a week later, Tuesday, May 18th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the second session. And you can go to BEBpodcastprofits.com. That's BEBpodcastprofits.com. So if you're interested in starting a podcast or you currently have a podcast and you need to learn how to monetize it quickly, make sure you register for the live training. I'm telling you, we're going to talk about everything from ideation all the way to the technical aspects of your podcast to the quick monetization of the podcast. Once again, BEBpodcastprofits.com. Before we close on out, family, I know I say this each and every weekend, but thank you so much to the BEB family, because every episode we get more and more downloads, and that's attributed to you guys. So please continue to spread the word about the podcast, the blog, and the movement. It's about building an economic power base in the worldwide Black economy. So it's about building and supporting Black-owned businesses, creating our own infrastructure, controlling the vertical, basically becoming independent and not having to rely on anybody else to generate revenues and money. And when you can create your own money, you're not beholden to anybody or anything. Love you guys. See you same time next week. Peace.